I'm Elaine Sims. I'm on the campus of St. Catherine's College this beautiful fall afternoon, 1 week before Halloween, October. I'm in the Emily W. Hunley Library. I have the honor to have with me today Dr. Nancy McCrary. Dr. McCrary, you visited us in the, let's see, this is the fall, so it was in the spring, and you were taking 5 students to Denver for a conference.
That's right. I had a class with 5 honors students called Contemporary Voices, and they developed a panel proposal, and we sent it to a national conference, and they were accepted. And so we went to Denver in June, and they presented in front of a national, international audience, and they did a wonderful job.
Well, and to refresh our audience memory, because we have such a regular viewers, these 5 students, they were females, but they each picked a lady, a woman.
They each picked a contemporary writer. They picked people like who was contemporary at that point, like Maya Angelou, and they studied their work, and they really took it in the direction of what are the voices of these women and what are they saying, and they sort of used that to develop their own voices. And their challenge was to relate the work of these writers and very well-known contemporary writers to their own lives and finding their own voices, which is what undergraduates in college are all about, is finding their voice.
Were you able to recognize the achievement they made by doing this as they went through the process and presented, each of them presented their paper? Did you, I'm going to say, did you see a difference, but did you see the growth that probably actually happened internally with each of these students?
Well, yes, I did, and the reason, that's exactly the reason that I encouraged them to submit to the conference, and was because I saw such a change in them as they studied. First of all, teaching an honors class is a great gift, because you have a classroom full of students who do everything you ask them to do. They do all the reading, and then they read more. And
wow,
and
that's kind of probably unusual.
Right.
I hate to say that, but it
and
probably is.
They talk, but they came into the class looking for my direction and my voice and what I knew, and I wasn't willing to have it just be that. So I encouraged them to find their own voices and to actually learn to argue and to actually learn to make a case and defend that. And they were shy about doing it at first, and then pretty soon I couldn't get a word in edgewise. So when I saw that, I asked them if they'd consider taking it to a national conference, because I thought there was a chance they'd be accepted, and typically only graduate students are accepted at these. So it was a great honor for them. I was a little nervous about going with 5 students to Denver, and we had a great time.
Oh, yeah, because they had just changed the marijuana law, so I remember we talked about that.
That's right. That's right.
And I'm interested. I can't remember. Were they traditional or non-traditional students?
They were all, I believe they were all living on campus and traditional students.
Okay, so and when I say that to the audience, traditional students are students that are college-age students.
That's
Non-traditional would be working mothers, people that have stayed out of college, never went to college until they were older. So,
and many of our students are non-traditional. One of these students was of legal age, so she was a little bit non-traditional. I only know that because I had to know were they legal age when I set them free in Denver.
I was going to say, well, that's what I thought, that legal age, because then she could
That's right. That's right. So only one I had to worry about.
Interesting. Give me a little bit of your background, and I guess I really should have done this from the beginning. How long have you been at St. Catherine's now?
This is my 3rd year at St. Catherine's. Prior to that, I was at the University of Kentucky for many years. I've been in higher education for about 18 years now. So I taught at a small college in North Georgia, a women's college there. Then I did my doctorate at UK in the College of Education, and then I stayed on as a professor there. So, but I was always, I live in Willisburg, so I have always been looking at St. Catherine's as a desirable place to teach, and had explored that over the last many years, and finally I decided to come. and it's been wonderful. There are great things about working at a large institution, of course, but there's something about St. Catherine's and the Dominican Sisters that is, really inspiring to me. And my whole research agenda is social justice and education. So
your heart was drawn to it because of the philosophy of the Dominican nuns, which the Dominican Sisters.
That's right. It's the mission. It's embedded in the mission of the Dominican Sisters of Peace. And I tell friends all over the country that my best friends here are Dominican nuns, because they are the smartest people here, almost the most well-educated, and I love talking to them. Mm-hmm. So they challenge me in a lot of ways, both intellectually and spiritually.
I think we've mentioned on this show before, after Hurricane Katrina, we had a congregation of Dominicans that, not a congregation, a convent that moved up here because actually they were displaced and they've never gone back. And Sister Jean, we've interviewed her, and I know that there are several other several of the sisters, and
Sister Louisa, I think.
Sister Louisa, but I'm always a little astounded at the quality of the women that walk this campus,
right.
and not just women, men also. I don't mean
That's
to
right.
sound partial at all.
What was striking to me is that many of the nuns have PhDs from Notre Dame, from Georgetown. They're very well educated and deep thinking people. Mm-hmm. So I find them at least as interesting as all the colleagues I had at UK.
Okay. Before we move on to talk about your book, let's talk. Would you expound a little bit on the issues that the Dominicans believe in, part of their philosophy, that interest you a lot to bring you to this social justice?
I think one of the most important parts of their mission, which is derived from St. Dominic, is to study and to share the fruits of that study. Now, you can interpret that in many ways. I interpret that as a value on scholarship, a value on study and learning, but also an equal value on engaging with that, sharing that knowledge that comes from that study or that exploration or that research. And so, and by sharing, I think that also embedded in that mission is the idea that we not only share our knowledge, but we share by giving back to the community in which we live, whether that's this small community or the larger world. So I think in that way they're right, they're really situated within a social justice paradigm.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, and we did mention it before we started this interview, was, of course, Sister Claire McGowan and what she did with the pipeline.
Right.
I mean, it's just, and she was so visible. And every time it was in the newspaper, Sister Claire was standing up there on that, I guess she was at the state capitol. She took a,
right.
I think about, and we didn't talk about this, but I think about the Wendell Berry choosing St. Catherine's for his ag program. And I've said this on the show before, the night that they had their party or reception when they were having the big conference here, and man from Chicago looked at me, he said, every school in the country wanted this. Why you? I said, location, 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 but also the Dominican Sisters.
That's right.
And he came on campus, and he knew that this is where it needed to be.
Right. And Sister Claire is somebody I have great admiration for, and I think she lives that. I think she's a model of that mission of social justice, which is to, I think both Wendell Berry and Leah Baines talk about it as the ethic of affection, the ethic of affection for the place that you live, affection for each other, affection for all the people that are here, for your neighbors and your community and your family, and for the land itself. And so I translate that, because my field is teacher education. I translate that into affection for the field of education and training teachers, and affection for my students and their success.
Yeah, and of course, education is our future, but teachers are the ones, you know, we're all asked what teachers in your life you really felt like make a difference, and they do.
That's
They
right.
do. They make a difference.
That's right. And there's some major changes happening in the field of education where we're beginning to sort of become a corporate model, and what many of us worry about is losing what we know of as public education, free public education for all. And that's sort of the hallmark of our democracy. It always has been. I believe we're the only country in the world who's always had a free public education for all.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the work in social justice is to work against that becoming corporatized for profit, and to continue to sort of resist that model and support the model of a strong public education for all
And my
students.
goodness, with the price of colleges now, that's
That's
monumental.
right.
It's
That's
monumental. And, you know, it's repeated over and over, get a college education, but
Right. And
for the financial investment,
I've been
it's
reading a lot and researching for this book, and you know, I've just read an article, I think in the New York Times, but written by an attorney who's said that we all think we know what teachers do because we all had to go to school for 13 years, sometimes 14 years, sometimes longer. And so we all have this sense that we know what teachers do. We know which ones are good, which ones we remember, which ones didn't do a good job. And the case she was making is, no, we actually don't know what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because I'm in teacher education, you know, I advocate for teachers having a doable job, being respected as professionals, and so that's largely my inspiration for wanting to do this book.
well, and being effective teachers, you know,
That's
being
right.
effective.
Being
That's so important.
effective, not rather than being people who sort of help make profit, you know, in terms of capital. I think this book will be largely about protecting teachers as professionals who are caring, who serve a lot of roles in children's
Who
lives.
love what they do.
Who love what they do. And I just
Do what you love and love what you do.
had a young man last week pop in my office who just finally finished all the tests, passed them, and has just taken a job in Marion County at the middle school. And he sat down and said, I can't believe I did this, and I can't believe they pay me to do this. I love every minute of
wonderful.
it. And he
That's
almost
wonderful.
brought tears to my eyes. This is a student that didn't have it easy in any way, and we've all been pushing him, and he's there. Now he's a brilliant mathematician. He'll be the best math teacher they have there, I'm sure.
Math, wow, that's great.
Right.
Because so few people choose it.
But he doesn't
That's
really.
wonderful.
Yeah, he's
That's
not so
wonderful.
fond of literature or writing. It's math. He just wants to teach
That's great.
that, and he coaches. But it was so nice to see him so happy with what he was doing, and that when it works right, that's what happens.
Sure, sure. That has to make you feel so good.
It does.
Well, let's talk about this book. The proposal for the book has been accepted, so I assume that means that the book is going to be published. Is that what that means?
Yes,
Okay.
I submitted the prospectus to Peter Lang Publishing in New York, and they were thrilled about it and sent a contract, and we just negotiated that contract and signed it. So the book should. Our deadline to have all the chapters in is in May, and we're hoping that the book will be out by August, in time for lots of people to buy it for the
Okay,
fall.
so the process of sending a book to a publisher, how do they read the book? Or how do they analyze if the book is worth publishing or not? What's the,
You have to
I just
develop-
think our audience might want to know that.
Well, I've published a lot of research articles in my career in the area of social justice and education. So I have that to fall back on, and you have to have a name to some extent.
Okay.
But you write a pretty complex prospectus, and you submit it to a publisher that you think publishes that kind of material. And Peter Lang is one of the biggest publishing houses in the field of education in the United States and Europe. And so in what I do in my scholarship, you get many more rejections than acceptances. And so this was a great pleasure to be accepted and sign that contract and be on our way. Among the people that we invited to write chapters, you also have to gather the people together and have their agreement to do the chapters in the prospectus, so that the publisher can see who these people are and whether they think they can market the book. And they take a publisher like this, they put quite a bit of effort into marketing the books that they publish. So I invited two of our faculty at St. Catharine who do social justice work. And because this book is called Social Justice Inside and Outside the Classroom, I thought that Dr. Leah Baines would, with the Berry Center, would be a nice addition. And so she sent in her abstract. It was peer-reviewed and applauded and accepted. And then Dr. Tara Tuttle also, she does a lot of her work in women's studies, and so she has a social justice perspective as well. So they're both now accepted chapter authors in the book. And my co-editor and I, Wayne Ross at the University of British Columbia, will write the introduction. I will write the first chapter, and then the book will be in several sections with chapters built around themes.
So as I'm looking at the outline of the book, there's 5 parts. Different people contribute. In the first part there's 4 sections, second's 4, third 4, 5. So you can see, you and Wayne Ross conceived of how it was going to go together, and then you chose different people to contribute to different sections of the book, right?
That's right. And we sent invitations, and they had to send us back abstracts of what they would write.
Did you give them the topic of what you wanted them to do?
We gave them a description of the topic and how we conceived of it. And, and really nobody turned us down. They all were delighted to be part of it.
These people are from all over the United States.
That's right.
Everywhere.
That's right.
United Kingdom.
That's right.
This is pretty amazing. It kind of. How will this book be used? What's the purpose of this book?
You never know, but I mean, our hope, at least with Peter Lang, our hope is that it is out by August and marketed to universities, particularly for graduate level classes in social justice, either in the classroom or outside of the classroom. And that's one way I see it being used. I also see it being used in undergraduate education too, as a reader that you can pull chapters out of that are specific to what you're teaching, or that will further extend what you're teaching. So I think it can be used in many ways, and it's quite a challenge to pull all that together and edit it. And I've now signed a contract saying that it'll be perfect in May, so I have my work cut out for me.
Well, it's God could have given me this job, and I couldn't have done it even if He let me go to heaven. There's no way. It's to me, it looks just so far beyond what I can imagine. I'm so impressed. I'm sure it's not something, because of my limited ability to do something like this, that I would probably be able to even understand, but it's just so interesting, and it's amazing that it's coming out of St. Catherine's, you know, that you're here. It is a part of St. Catherine's because you're a part of St. Catherine's.
Well, what I tell my students about writing is the best writing in the world is writing that's easy to read for anyone.
Correct, especially for me.
That's what we're after in these chapters,
Okay.
not to make it a really complex, very
then maybe I can
intellectual
read it.
book, but to make it really digestible by anyone who has an interest in reading them. So now, students tend to think that you need to use lots of very difficult words and that in order
Yeah, you
to
need to have that dictionary ready to
I would
on
say,
your phone
and I'm
to-
absolutely sure one of our mentors here, Wendell Berry, would also say, good writing is writing that's accessible to everyone.
yeah.
So
That was obvious
That's
when
what
he
we're
was here
looking
for the
for.
readings when they interviewed him, because he read it so eloquently and simple words, but the way the way he said it.
right.
And I guess I'm going to put you on the spot here. Let's talk about when we talk about social justice. Let's hit home. What issues in Kentucky do you think would, for our audience, you know, when we can say social justice, and I might think, okay, so what exactly are we talking about here? What are the issues of social justice that you see that are something that's present here? Whether, and some of them are good, some of them might not be so good. But would you feel free to mention some of those things?
Sure. I mean, I think a continual problem all over our country, but particularly in our area or in rural areas at large, is poverty. Poverty is an issue of social justice. And poverty underlies lots of other problems in our society. So that's one. I think the Sister Claire's initiative to fight the pipeline from coming through this area because of the hazards and the danger to the land is an issue of social justice.
Mm-hmm.
I think what the Berry Center is, that whole idea of an ethic of affection for the land and the place. I love teaching here because I love teaching I love teaching anyone, but I mostly love teaching non-traditional students who have always wanted to go to college and they have not been able to find a way to afford it. It's daunting to them. They're first generation college. It looks like something that they can't do, and they're my favorite students because if we can nurture them and get them through, I think that will go a long way to breaking sort of the cycle of poverty. I've always been a teacher, so I'm quickly becoming in that part of that cycle of poverty, but it's not funny. I don't know why I'm laughing.
You could be in research and you make more money. But
maybe. So I think that's an issue. I think an issue of education is a social justice issue.
Absolutely.
I think it's becoming more and more the privilege of the wealthy, but I don't see education as that. I see it as something that should be accessible to everyone, and something that can change their lives. And we can talk about what the what the goal of education is. And really, I think the goal of education, is to have a life of the mind, to learn to think and to learn to think independently, and to value knowledge, not to use it as a tool to be better than someone else, but to value that and to become lifelong learners. I love it when my students sort of rise up in that way and they begin to feel, they find their voices, they begin to talk about what they know, and even when they begin to not listen to me and listen to each other more, to me that's a victory, because all of a sudden they have the self-efficacy to think they know. And if I can contribute that here, I think that's a really important social justice issue, is making education accessible and not something that only belongs in the domain of the wealthy or the privileged.
Yes. And I know some young people that are just so eager to learn, so eager to it's obvious in almost everything they do, from a menu in a restaurant, if they're lucky enough to be there, to reading the road sign and just trying to interpret that. What does that mean to me? You know, you just love those hungry minds, and it's very promising for the future of this country to see those young people that are, and they don't have to go to expensive schools to do that. It's a matter of teachers.
Right. And nearly
teachers
all
too.
colleges are expensive now, but we can find ways. We can find ways to get them here and support them and find scholarships
Sure.
and support.
Sure.
So I think many get discouraged about the financial side of it. And frankly, when I went to college, it was affordable, but I don't think it is any longer. So we work hard to make it accessible to everyone. And you know, I think when we're born, we all want to learn. I think little children, that's what they're all about.
Oh, sure, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
And
they're so inquisitive.
That's right, and we
And
want
play
to keep
and
them
everything.
there rather than discouraging that.
Imagination, we talked about that earlier. Just keep that imagination going. Just keep that you know, that desire
curiosity
to
is
find that other side of that darkness. That's what's
that's
there.
right,
What's
to
there?
be curious and you know, I tell my students, first of all, I don't think wealth is about how much money you have. I think wealth is about how many options you have. And so
It's beautiful.
by being educated, I think they're creating options. They'll become better citizens of our democracy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And hopefully participate in it. That's another issue of social justice. If the only people who participate in our democracy are a certain class of people, then we don't have a democracy.
Yeah. Or lobbyists, lobbyists
Yeah.
are not it.
Right. But we need everyone to participate
That's
and to
right.
know how
That's
to do
right.
that.
That's right.
Because
Show up
we
for
need
something.
their
Yeah,
voices.
yeah.
So that's
And don't be afraid to speak up. I think, you know, the intimidation of going against the grain. Of course, I think we all go through phases in our life, especially as young teenagers, to not be like you want to be like everybody, conform.
you need to be liked.
Yeah, you need to be
Well, we
liked.
all still need to be
We
liked.
still
it's
still
probably
need
a
that.
fundamental human need.
But I've told people often, it's nice to finally get to 55 and finally decide what you want to do and not be afraid of it.
and
It shouldn't take that long.
Right.
It shouldn't take that long.
and not be afraid to speak and to be there, to share who you are and
That's
to
right.
share your
That's
views.
right. And to walk away from that conversation and not think, did I just say the wrong thing? And just think, well,
Right.
we're all different,
Right.
accepting each other.
We walk through life's experiences every day, and the ability, education, I think, gives us a way to make sense of those and to articulate those and to share differing perspectives. You know, we have such a divided world right now, I think, and divided country, but I think it's largely because we haven't learned to talk to each other about what we think and why.
I agree.
And,
I agree.
and hear each other,
I agree.
have real dialogue, which is another part of, I think, the Dominican mission is the dialogic, the ability to listen to somebody else, to really listen to their views, even if you totally disagree.
Right.
You're going to be more informed if you can hear them. So.
Well, we're probably not that much difference in age, but we were, you know, my parents were post-Depression babies, and they worked so hard to give us the life they didn't have, and there wasn't really a lot of time for conversation.
That's right.
Unfortunately.
And I grew up with a single mother who didn't have any time for very
so,
much conversation.
So we're learning. We're learning.
We're learning, but I did
I think a
grow
lot
up
of young
with
people are doing quite well with it now, though. I
Yeah.
do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I also grew up with a mother who grew up in the Depression. So, you know, we learned a lot. They passed down a lot of cautions to us. And we may be the last generation to really know something about what that meant. But in a way, we're falling into a bit of a depression now because the poverty is so high in our country.
Yeah.
And such a small minority hold most of the capital. So I see education as the way to move out of that and to restore a middle class, which I think is
It's so important.
critical.
Yeah, critical to this country.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And to this area this rural area that we live in, which is as beautiful as any place I've lived.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. No matter where you
So,
go, it's always good to come
that's
home.
right.
It is. It's absolutely beautiful here.
Right.
Nobody understands until they come, and then they don't want to leave.
You know, I moved from San Francisco to Willisburg, and my friends in San Francisco, first they said, where is Kentucky?
I know. Been there
And I
many,
said,
many, many
"Well,
times in conversations.
Come see, and some have visited, and they're stunned by how really beautiful it is.
It is. It's
So.
it's as beautiful as any state you'll go to.
Right.
I love Virginia, but Kentucky is just as beautiful.
I've had people say, what did you do so bad to make you have to live this far out? I said I was smart.
You know, we all realize that someday we just can't continue the rat race. We've got to just be at peace in a peaceful place.
And life is about the earth, and it's about community. It's about a lot of things, and all those things can be. We live in a very rich place in those ways, I think.
And Kentucky is the happy hunting ground. It was the Eden of the West.
Mm-hmm.
The Eden of the West.
Yeah.
And it still is in many ways.
Right.
So undiscovered.
And then we have St. Catherine's right here in the middle of that, which
That's
is
right.
really
Right in
a
the middle
gem,
of it.
I
Right in the
think.
middle of it.
So
Right in the middle of it.
we don't do everything right, but we're working hard at it.
But still, that's true. Okay. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. This is going to be very interesting. This is going to be very interesting. Maybe
hope
I'll see
so.
this book and read one chapter.
Well,
The Last Teacher.
I hope it's
That would have
mine.
been me. No. No. Very interesting.
Thank you.
You so much.
Okay.
You're a great lady.